Perfect. Should be live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, on all the streams here. So, uh, yeah, man, excited to do this, Dustin. And I was just saying, I love the background. Where are you guys? Is that the Grand Canyon? I assume I was trying to.
That's Horseshoe Bend on the
Oh,
way into
cool.
Grand Canyon. It's the Colorado River comes into the Grand Canyon, and it's just amazingly beautiful. So it's called Horseshoe Bend, and when you're standing there, it just feels so awe-inspiring. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, we are big. I mean, well, really, I got it from my wife mostly. She grew up going to national parks and stuff, but we're big hikers and love the outdoors from that perspective, and just being able to like unplug and really experience things like that. I mean, you're right; it's truly awe-inspiring. So,
Yeah.
that's great. It's a great place for the family too. So I love seeing the four little ones in there.
Thanks, man.
Well, cool. I know we'll have people jumping on, joining us here over the next few minutes. Again, this replay will go out, over YouTube, email, variety of places too. So, everyone jumping in, feel free to jump in the chat, say where you're watching from. Always love doing this with the community here. Was really excited to welcome on Dustin for this one, especially. I know we've had a couple of conversations, and you yourself, I mean, you're a real estate investing expert. You're the founder of masterpassiveincome.com, and you've built up your own portfolio to become successfully unemployed. Love the shirt there. Did that by
Thanks,
the age
man.
of 37. I know you're like teaching others to help them not need a job ever again, and you put out a ton of content on that between social media and your website, your courses, your coaching, all that stuff. So I was really excited to have you on, man.
I appreciate it. I really am glad to be on. I just really enjoy sharing with people that normal, I'm going to say normal, but like ordinary people like your next door neighbor. It's really easy to get sucked in a trap of thinking you can't do it. But you can. It's really not that hard. It's actually simple to invest in real estate. And if you're going to do it for passive income, like what I did, I wanted to make sure that I didn't have to work a job and I was able to make passive income, basically make money without working, provide food on our table, roof over our heads. And it's just great to be able to now share this with everybody. So I appreciate you having me on, Matt.
Yeah, I think we a lot of times call it simple but not easy. It's straightforward, but you still got to put in the work to make that happen. So, I think for today, again, feel free to jump in the chat, say where you're watching from, tell us where you are at in that passive income journey, so we can tailor our information today to kind of fit where you're at. And we're going to be taking Q&A throughout. I've got plenty of questions myself, but if you're watching this, feel free. Dustin was kind enough to have his time here today, so feel free to go in and jump in the chat and throw in questions, and we can make this an interactive conversation there. So. Can you maybe start? I know I read a little bit about your background, Dustin, but can you talk a little bit more about your journey and how you got into real estate, and give us a little more details there, so that way people can really ask great questions as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go to the end and then I'll go back to the beginning. So the end, like you said,
Perfect.
I was able to quit my job, or I like to say successfully unemployed. Become successfully unemployed by having other ways to make money than working that dead end job. Just over broke because that's what you're working, and living is just over broke because your boss is not paying you enough. So I quit my job when I was 37 years old, and after that, just started just relaxing. But then people started asking me how I became successfully unemployed, and I would tell them invest in real estate, and then they'd want me to teach them. So fast forward to now, that's what I do. But let me quickly go back, and I'll give you the catalyst of what got me to invest in real estate and put me over that hurdle and say, yes, I am going to do it. So I had always been entrepreneurial in my life. Growing up, always entrepreneurial. I've been interested in business, wanting to have businesses. But at the same time, just like everybody, we are all taught to go to school, get good grades, go to college, spend thousands and thousands of dollars in college and get in debt, and at the same time get good grades and get a piece of paper to hopefully get a job from, and then work 40 years or more and hopefully retire on what you saved up that entire time when you're working a just over broke job. So I'm doing that same thing, and I'm also doing entrepreneurial type businesses. And I mean, I even had, at 13 years old, I had a newspaper route. Newspapers are definitely like almost extinct, but you ride in my bike at 13 years old, put newspapers inside of my bags, and at 5 a.m. throw them really hard and bang against the garage door, waking people up on accident. But that's what I did when I was 13 years old. Then I had a graphic and website design company. I had a skateboard manufacturing business. I even had a pizzeria, a convenience store. So I've always been entrepreneurial, but always worked that 9 to 5 job. And so I got to tell you this story. So when I was working in California, I was working at a regular county government job. I was doing IT or technology for the county. And so working all the time, sit down, 9 to 5 job. And then my wife and I started having kids. And by the time my wife had our fourth child was born, and I went on paternity leave. That's where the dad stays home and helps mommy changing poopy diapers, bonding with the baby and all that sort of stuff. And I was off for about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at most. And I get back to work, and that same week that I get back to work on a Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon, I get a call from my boss's secretary, like the top dog. She says, "Dustin, would you please come to the office?" And I said, "Sure." And hung up the phone. And then I paused for a second. I thought, why in the world would they be calling me to the office? Like, this isn't normal. This is rather weird. But as I sat there, I remembered before I went on paternity leave, there was some rumors or some rumblings going on in the county that there potentially could be layoffs because they were running out of either income or taxes. They didn't have enough. I immediately shook that off because, like, no way. I did what everybody told me to do. I got a career. And I've worked really, really hard, 12, 13 years now. Plenty of seniority. My bosses love me. I do a great job. I always get raises. So I shook that off. But then I get up and then I walk down the hallway to my boss's office. Now, this hallway isn't very long. In fact, it's kind of short, but every single step that I take, the hallway gets longer and longer and longer, and it feels like my feet become lead bricks. And the weight of the world just starts to kind of come down on me because I started thinking, this could be the time that I lose my job. Well, I get through the hallway and I turn the corner and I see my boss's door. His door is closed, and I look at his secretary, and she looks at me and grins, and sheepishly she says, "Dustin, would you please have a seat?" So she's grinning at me and trying to console me with her eyes because she knows everything about what's going on. I know nothing about what's going on. So I go and I take a seat. And as I'm sitting there, I start thinking about my family, and I start thinking about all these years that I've been following this quote unquote, job, career thing that I've been taught from the very beginning of, being alive. And I think, is that all a waste? And then I start thinking, oh my goodness, if I lose my job, how am I going to be able to provide for my family, put food on the table? And well, if I can't do that, does that make me a failure as a father? Does that make me a failure as a husband, as a man providing for his family? Well, as I'm sitting there, my hands get all clammy, my forehead gets all sweaty because the weight of everything is just crushing down on me. And so the door to my boss's office opens up, and out walks a lady with a piece of paper in her hand. She's a coworker of mine, noticeably distraught, noticeably upset, but she's not necessarily crying, but you can tell her world has absolutely been rocked. And as she passes by me, my boss says, "Dustin, would you please come into the office?" And I go in there and I get laid off. And remember, this is the government. Nobody gets fired or laid off for the government, but I did. So I take that layoff notice and I walk back down that short hallway to my office, and I sit in my desk and I sit down there, and I realized two things right then and there, Matt. I realized the first thing is I need to get another job. I need to make sure that I provide for my family, put food on the table. And so I was really blessed, praise the Lord, to be able to find another job in the same county, a whole different department, sheriff's department, doing the same work. It was a blessing. I didn't actually get laid off, just transferred over. Then, sitting in that chair, I realized the second thing. The second thing was I need to make sure this never, ever happens to me again. I need to make sure that nobody has the power to take away my ability to provide for my family. So right then and there, I realized whenever anybody would ask me the question, "Dustin, what do you do?" Normally I would say, well, I work for the county. I do IT work for the county. I'm basically presenting my value as my job. Remember, living just over broke, and I realized my value doesn't come from my job. My value comes from my God, myself, and my family. And especially that job could be taken away at any second. So as I'm sitting there, I realized even though 100% of my money comes from my job, That's now my part-time job. I am now a full-time investor because I've always I had one or two properties at the time, passive income rental properties making me money, $250 or more every single month from those properties. And I realized I needed to become an investor. So when anybody would ask me the question, what do you do? I say, I am an investor. Let me fast forward the story. Year after year, I bought property after property after property, each one making me a minimum of $250 a month in passive income. Eventually, I had 30 plus properties, and I realized after like 4 or 5 years, I was like, my goodness, why am I still working here? Like, I'm going to quit. And even though I was making $75,000 a year here at that job, I realized my value is so much more than my bosses could ever pay me. And so everybody listening or watching this, you need to realize this as well. Your value is so much more than anybody could ever pay you. And this is how you absolutely know that you're worth so much more than they'll pay you. So number one, your boss is only paying you just enough money to keep you working without quitting, but not so much money that takes money out of their pocket. And so what I did is I kept changing my life, my mindset from being an employee to now being an investor. Now, buying property after property, I'll round out the story by sharing, I went to my new boss, great boss and everything, and I went to him, I said, boss, I'm laying you off. Well, jokingly I said that, but I'm like, here's my 2 weeks notice. I am done here. And he said, Dustin, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't have to do anything. I literally have rental properties. They make me $250 or more in passive income for every property, and I'm going to quit. So round out the story to share, I walked to my car. I parked. It was downtown, and so I parked a mile and a half away because I didn't want to pay for parking. I was pretty frugal. Done this walk 1,000 times. And this last walk, it was the best walk of my life. I felt like I was walking on clouds, as opposed to the one where I was walking that short walk down the hallway where I felt like I had lead bricks. I was walking on clouds because I knew I would never, ever need a job again. And I was getting paid for the value that I actually bring. So you need to realize this about yourself. You're getting paid so much less than you are worth. You need to start getting paid for the value. So I'll pause that story and let you ask some questions. I know you probably got plenty.
No, that was incredible, man. I mean, and again, reminder, anyone listening to this, feel free to jump into the chat, ask questions. Really excited to have Dustin on here and share that story, and hopefully that inspires you guys to really action and control future. Well, I know you'd mentioned like, hey, you were starting to build that portfolio. You had a little bit of cash flowing, come there. Can you kind of talk about that and how you got into those first couple properties, how you got the ball rolling? I know a lot of people listening to this, they may have hesitations, analysis paralysis. There's a variety of reasons why you're not getting started. So can you talk about that process a little bit too?
Totally. So I'm going to give you the process that I did, and this is the wrong way. Now, I've since figured out the right way. I'll tell you the line, I'll say this over and over again, is we need to build the business first. That's the right way. But let me quickly jump to the wrong way, how I did it. So in 2006, when I first started investing, I did this the wrong way. I lived in California, so I flew to Ohio, found a property manager and found a realtor and put them together, bought a property, and quote unquote had a rental property. The first check was great, but in 6 months, my property manager started stealing from me. And the reason why is because I didn't vet the property manager. I didn't do anything to build the business. I was just listening to other quote unquote coaches, teachers, gurus on how to do this. This is what they tell you. And this is what I did. This is the wrong way. They say, find a property anywhere in the country, run the numbers. Make sure that you can make a little bit of passive income, like $50 a month in passive income, but you'll get appreciation. You'll get all these other benefits. And I don't invest for appreciation now. I'm literally, you can't see this right now in the video, but I have 4 kids, like I told you. In the video, you can see I have 4 kids in the background. And I'm literally going to give these properties to my kids. These are generational wealth. So I invest for passive income. Now, what I did was I ran the numbers, and then I said, I'm going to make a little bit of money. Let me go ahead and buy the properties. Then I bought the property. This is what they tell you. This is what I did. Run the numbers. Then spend thousands of dollars buying the property. Then spend more thousands and thousands of dollars to fix up the property. Then you find a tenant, and then you find a property manager. Well, in my opinion, that's literally backwards. I did that, and it was really, really bad. Let me quickly give you the right way to do this. This is how I do it, how I teach all my students now, is we build the business first. And now, remember, I've always been entrepreneurial, like I said. So that first time I did it wrong. But then after I realized this is wrong, let me take it at the business approach. Let me figure out how to do it if I were a business owner. So that's what I did. I started implementing different things. So this is what it's going to look like. If you're going to build the business, Let's give you an example. Actually, if you're going to start a convenience store, a convenience store, you have candy bars and sodas and stuff like that. If you're going to start one of those, you're not going to sign your name on a lease, open the doors, and put a box of candy bars in there and hope to run a business. No, you would not do that. You go out of business in like 2 seconds. What you would do, though, is you would build the business first. You'd get the gondolas. Those are the shelving units that all the candy bars and things go on. You get the countertops, the cold storage, fountain machines, bank accounts, cash registers, insurance, all that store and employees, all that stuff before you actually buy any inventory. Once you have that entire business set up, then you buy the inventory and you put it into your business. Same exact thing with real estate investing. All these other people will tell you your property is your business or is a business. Each property is a business. That's absolutely wrong. It's absolutely wrong. What we do here at Master Passive Income and how we scale our business, this is how I was able to quit my job. I was able to scale my business because I build the entire business first, and then I now buy properties, and that is my inventory. So I build the business, and then I buy a property. That's a piece of inventory that I put into the business, and that was how I can scale so fast because I already have the entire business built. Now I'll quickly give it to you, and I'll let you ask questions in just a second, Matt.
Yeah.
So you find property managers, realtors, wholesalers, inspectors, plumbers, roofers, contractors, handymen, insurance agents, mortgage brokers. Like, we do all that stuff before we buy any properties. And you'll know that this is the wrong way to do it. Imagine you bought a property, you listen to everybody else. They say, run the numbers, make sure you're making a little bit of money in passive income, and then you do all those other things like I just shared with you. If you buy a property, spend thousands of dollars on a property, then spend even more $1,000 to fix it up, then find a tenant, and then go and look for a property manager, you cannot find a good property manager, then you don't have an asset anymore. You literally have a liability because you don't have anybody to manage the property. We invest all over the country. My students and I, we invest all over the country. But because we build the business first, we don't have a liability. We make sure we build a business, buy the property. It's going to make us $250 a month or more in passive income. And then we just put it into our business, and we have our managers, basically everybody else do the work. But I'll quickly share this last thing. This is how I was able to quit my job. I bought that first property and then used my cash, my wife and my cash, to buy that first property, then refinanced it, pulled the cash out to buy the next property. Then I refinanced it, did it over and over and over again. So I just kept recycling my money. But here's how I was able to quit my job. I knew $250 or more in passive income. That is $3,000 a year. I mean, $3,000 a year is a lot of money. Then I realized, oh my goodness, if I bought 10 properties, that's $2,500 a month without working. That's $30,000 a year in passive income. 20 properties is $5,000 a month without working. That is $60,000 a year in passive income. You just keep scaling from there. Eventually, you have the minimum of $250. Some properties make me $500, $600, $700. And those properties I bought back in 2006, even though the market crashed in 2008 and 2009, I still made money whether the market went up, whether the market went down, or sideways because I invested for passive income. And then once I scaled the business, I had enough money coming in, I was just able to quit my job.
Yeah, I was going to say buying for cash flow like that, you're market proofing yourself. So that's but you've been through that crash, and regardless of what happens, coming forward, you've got that stable, properly bought cash flowing property like that. So,
a question. Let me quickly answer a question that people always ask me right away when I share that. They say, okay, well, when it crashes, won't rents go down? Well, you can kind of think that. It's easy to think that. But think about it realistically. Back in 2008, there was foreclosure after foreclosure after foreclosure. Like, well, shoot, people are losing a house. It's bad. It's sad. I was able to buy them, which is really, really awesome to be able to buy them at really, really inexpensive price. And what happens to the pool of renters? They can't buy a house anymore. They can't own a house, but they have to live somewhere. So there's so many more renters. So what happened for me is my rents went up as opposed to down. And now the properties that I bought back in 2006, 2007, 8, 9, they're literally doubled the amount of rent. So instead of making $250, I'm making $550, $700 a month, $1,000 a month on some properties in passive income because over time rents just go up.
Yep, I was going to say rents aren't necessarily correlated to the overall market like that. So yeah, great question there. One thing as you were going through this, I know you said your background was in, a variety. You clearly had an entrepreneurial mindset. Like your background was in a variety of different, side hustles and different things you were doing. What do you think about real estate really clicked? Like, what do you think was different and unique about real estate versus anything else you had tried before?
Easily was that I made money without working. And now, so a lot of people have heard of the book, or maybe even read the book, The 4 Hour Work Week. It's a good
Hmm.
book and all, but I think working 4 hours a week is for suckers. I don't want to work 4 hours a week. I don't even want to work 4 hours a month. I maybe work 30 minutes a month. And that all that is I get my statements from my property manager, look them over, make sure everything looks good, and then put them away and go back to play with my kids or going to the gym or literally doing whatever I want. And so after I bought, 3, 4, 5 properties, once I started really going into it, I realized all these other businesses, convenience store, escape, like even just selling a skateboard, every single person a customer, that's a tiny boss. Instead of having one big boss that's giving you $75,000 a year, I had to sell lots and lots of skateboards in order to make money, and each one of those were a little tiny boss. If they didn't come back and buy, I wouldn't be making money. And so I realized passive income is now the right way to go. That's why I created Master, and that's why I called it Master Passive Income, because there's a lot of other passive income ways to do it. There's a
Hmm.
lot of other ones, but real estate is, you're literally mastering it. Like I said, I wouldn't even need to work. All I need to do is hire like a virtual assistant, or even just hire one of my kids. Hey, and teach them how to look over the statements, make sure there's nothing wrong, and I wouldn't even have to do it because my properties work for me. And so when I say 30 minutes a month, that's if I'm just not buying properties. Now, here's a great thing. Because I built the business first, I have so many people sending me deals. I mean, DealMachine is a great resource to use as well. And I have people, wholesalers, that use DealMachine and then send me those deals that they're actually working on in the different areas of the country.
Well,
So
yeah.
what happens is I literally spend maybe 2 hours of my life, my own personal time, to buy a new property. I wake up in the morning, I go to the gym, they come back, and then I look at my email and I'm drinking my coffee. I'm like, oh, there's some wholesalers send me some properties. It takes me about 5 minutes to look them over, and I run some analysis, maybe 10 or 10 minutes. And I say, hey, I like that property. Put in an offer. That's another 5 minutes. So what's that? 20 minutes out of my time. Then I put all the other people to work, my either realtors or property managers, inspectors. I get them all to work. That doesn't take much time. It's like 5 minutes of phone calls. Then once we're in a contract, we get in the contracts another 5, 10 minutes of my time. I'm just kind of quickly adding them all up. 5, 10 minutes of my time. And then once we're in the contract, I don't do anything else. It's everybody else doing all the work because I built the business first. And then at the very end, I wire a check. That takes, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes from my computer. I literally do it from my computer. Wire a check, sign documents. They come to my house, sign documents, all that sort of stuff. So it literally takes me at most 2 hours of my time to buy a new property. That's because I have so many people in my business doing all the work that I don't have to do that. So that's what was so appealing for me, is I made money without working, and I can hire the right people to do the work inside the business. Now, here's also what's really super interesting, or I love. So I get a lot of people asking me, well, man, how do you afford a property manager? I'm like, well, when you think about it, it's really not that hard. It's actually fairly simple to afford a property manager. I don't get a job to go pay my property manager. In fact, I don't want to do that. And you'll get this, Matt. So I don't pay my taxes on my properties, on any of my properties. I don't pay my insurance. I don't pay my mortgage. I don't pay my property managers. I don't pay my anything. I don't pay anything out of my own pocket. My tenants pay for every bit of that. Now, when I build the business, I make sure that all those accounts are, expenses are accounted for, especially a property manager. I do not buy a property if I don't account for, let's say it's 10%, or go quickly back, say, I already know what my property manager is going to charge. So I already put that in my numbers to know, well, if I can't buy it for this certain price that covers all the expenses and gives me a passive income of $250, I don't buy it, or I offer lower, and then if they come down, then I'll buy the property. So that's the big thing about rental properties. I account for all the expenses, and if I could buy the property, that accounts for the expenses. And you just literally, it's super simple, this math. It's just addition, subtraction, and a little bit of multiplication. So you just add up all your expenses. I just went through them. Just add them all up, and then you talk to your property manager, who is the expert on the ground. You ask them, how much can I rent this property for? Then you add up all your expenses, and you figure out your income, which is your rents, and you deduct that. That difference is your passive income. Now, the great thing that I do is I don't rely on any like databases. I'll give you an example. I rely on experts on the ground. Zillow is not an expert. Trulia, Realtor.com, like all these
Yeah.
websites, they're not experts. who are the experts? Those are the people who literally live in that city. Because I'll give you an example. I invest in lots of cities. I know the areas at least as well as I can, but I'm not the expert. My students say, hey, Dustin, what do you think about this city? You invest there. I'm like, I'm not the expert. We need to find the experts in there. Even though I invest there, I don't consider myself the expert. The property managers are the experts. And this is what it looks like. I love this. So before I even buy a property, I go to my property manager. After I calculated my expenses, I say, hey, property manager, this is what an expert looks like. Property manager, I'm looking at this one property, particularly in this one area, and here's the address. Tell me how much it can rent for. What's the area like? What's the vacancy factor? How often it's going to be vacant. And a good property manager, an expert, is going to say, oh, I know that area. In fact, I have a property that we're managing that's like 2 blocks away. Zillow said we can get $1,600 for it. We tried. We could not get $1,600. We could only get $1,500. And so that is expert knowledge. If I run my numbers like what Zillow says is $1,600, then I'm going to be stuck. That's $100 less or more in my numbers than I could rent it for. That's going to make me probably lose money. So all that to say, we hire experts and we let the experts do the work for us.
Love that. I appreciate all the actual advice here as well, for people to come in. And I know you actually have a really, really fantastic free course as well. I'll share this in the chat here. But we have, I know obviously you're putting out a ton of content. You've got, Master Passive Income in general. You do great work there. So always, highly recommend checking that out. But that free downloadable, I know that's something great, like a great guide to be able to summarize some of the stuff you're talking about here. So I encourage people to go there and check that out too. Can you talk about a little bit? I know you have REWBCON coming up too. Can you maybe mention that a little bit and talk about that event too?
Yeah, so this is super fun. So when I've gone to real estate conferences, every single conference is the same. There's a session you go to, and it's a big sales pitch. It's all hype. They don't give you any actionable items. At the very end, they'll say, okay, now run to the back and go give us $30,000 on your 8 credit cards. I'm like, that's so horrible. It's just a sales pitch. I didn't want that. So I couldn't find anything that was just community-based. Let's just help each other out. And so what's great was because of Master Passive Income, I have my YouTube channel, podcast. I've met a lot of other real estate investors who are podcasters, YouTubers, basically have their own students and everything. And I called up my friends and I said, hey, I want to have a meetup for my people. Do you want to have a meetup? And literally all of them said, yes, absolutely. I said, well, how about I put together an event, a conference where we can build a community? And we want to bring all of our community, our audiences, our students, everybody to this one event and literally be giving. We want to be giving coaching, content, teaching, networking, all that sort of stuff at this conference. It's and so I was going to say, it's literally a no sales pitch conference. So I created the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference to be an investor community. When I first got started, there was nothing like this. And in fact, I will say, even right now, there is nothing like that. And I like this conference, and I realized I want this. Like, I would want to go to a conference where there's people that are helpful, that want to see me succeed and encourage me. So I said, there's nothing like this. Let me build it. So I created the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, REWBCON for short. You can check it out. You go to REWBCON.com. REWBCON.com, REWBCON.com, and it's going to be here in March in Phoenix. I love Phoenix, and wintertime is so beautiful. But also, everybody who's listening, I just want you to come, because for everybody, for DealMachine's audience, if you use the promo code Dustin, it's just a coupon code to get you $50 off. I literally just want to build a big community of a lot of fantastic investors. It's also not just rental properties. I have land flipping, like Seth Williams from RE Tipster, a good friend of mine. He's going to be there teaching about flipping. He's a great guy. I have Annie Dickerson from Good Egg, who does syndications. I have Airbnb experts, even communal living, mid-term length properties, BRR, Burr method strategy experts, even mobile home strategy. Long story short, I have 27 friends of mine that we're all coming together, and we're going to have a big, fun time. So it's going to be a regular conference where there's, opening sessions and breakout sessions and networking, and even the vendors that we love to use, we're going to bring them there so we can share with everybody how to become a better investor. So yeah, definitely use my promo code if you're going to go. I'd love to if you see me walking down the halls, grab me. This is a community building thing. We're not building a conference. We're building a community. So that's my big goal. So I love to see anybody there.
Yeah, I love the mission and vision for this. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we share that with our community as well. And was it promo code Dustin? You said
Yeah,
awesome.
DUSTIN,
Yeah,
very simple.
appreciate you setting that up for people as well. So, yeah, again, fantastic stuff you're giving us here. Want to make sure to shout that out for our community. One question I had too. I know you said like, make sure it's a simple, $250 threshold for that cash flow. What do you typically count in there for like capital expenditure? Those bigger. If you have any tips on estimating those big things that can pop up, or if you have tips on how to avoid those or things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, a big tip is I'll give you a couple of them. When you're buying the property, you're going to get a home inspection. And I personally would rather have the seller pay for any big, expenses like a roof or foundation. So here's a big tip. After you do your inspection, you'll see some deficiencies that you didn't know when you were, putting the offer. Let's say the roof needs about 3 years. There's a 3-year lifespan, 5 years, or whatever it might be on the roof. Go back to the seller. Here's a big tip. Say the roof isn't need to be replaced recently or really soon, like in the near future. You don't have to tell them 5 years because they might say 5 years isn't plenty. Just say it needs to be replaced very soon. Would you please replace the entire thing or credit me? Here's a quote, $6,000 quote. Would you please credit me the $6,000 because I will go ahead and do that. Oftentimes, and when I do this, where I coach my students, they at least gets like $1,000, $2,000. They'll negotiate. The seller will. So that helps us to save money, to get money down on the property. Also, with that, what I try to do to make sure that I'm making $250 a month in passive income is I capture equity when I buy the property. I don't put full price offers. I'm an investor. I want to make sure that I put lower offers so I capture equity before I buy the property. And so all that combined, what happens is we are able to, number one, purchase it, get under contract for lower than market value. So we capture that equity, making sure we're making $250 a month in passive income. But on top of that, what we do is we get the seller to pay for those capital expenses that you talked about. Along with that, what I do when I'm running my numbers. So quick step over to when I'm running my numbers to when I find the property. What I do is I usually suggest 5% of the total rent amount to repairs, normal maintenance, things like regular things like that. Another 5%, so 10% total, but another 5% for capital expenses. And so hopefully we're going to have the seller pay for a lot of that stuff up front, where, a furnace or AC or a roof or something. That'll be those big items that are going to be in the next 2 or 3 years will be taken care of. And then when we start saving that 10% for repairs and capital expenses, I suggest once we get to 2 or 3 months of rents saved up, then we don't need to worry about saving anymore. Because once you have, let's say, $3,000, there's that $3,000 is going to cover a lot. Especially if you have one property, it's $3,000. 2 properties is $6,000. Eventually, it just gets to be where, okay, I have $50,000 and I don't need $50,000. I'm not going to have $50,000 worth of repairs in 1 month. Let me go ahead and taper it back. So I usually have about $25,000 just sitting in an account, ready for anything. But here's the great thing: as I build my passive income business, I get $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 from property managers. So I don't even write a check anymore. They just deduct it from the next month's rent. And I have that buffer, literally just still sitting in the account, collecting me interest. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the buffers and how to think about that as your portfolio grows is a really, good perspective to keep in mind, because we do have newbies listening to this, trying to do their first deal, and then we also have people trying to scale that portfolio. So that's a great tip for the more advanced investor as well, on how to transition that. But I know in general, you talked about like, hey, I don't spend a ton of time really building my pipeline currently. And that's something we even the DealMachine, I know we're in that game around how to help people, give them a tool to build their own, build their own pipeline, build their own lead flow. We also recommend like, hey, that should be, a part of your strategy, but they, also invest in other parts of your strategy, put out content, put out things to be able to build an online brand. Is there anything, if you were starting new today, is there anything different you would do, or how would you really get out there and start to build that pipeline to set it up the way that you have today?
Well, so how would I say this? So I'm an investor and I invest for cash flow and I build the business first. What a lot of my students do is they find realtors first. Like they say they find an area of the country they want to invest. The first thing they do is find realtors. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, no, let's stop. We don't need deals yet. As long as we know this is a good area, we don't need to worry about deals. Deals will come, and we'll use lots of great tools. And so I love having different tools. Realtors are great resources. Wholesalers, I love wholesalers. They're fantastic. Love using DealMachine. I love having all these different ways for people to get me, or for me to see properties and people to send me properties. But before that, so when you ask the question, what would I do differently? This is the same thing that I tell all my students. And let me say also, differently, everything I've been explaining is how I've done it differently, because I've taught so many people now. I've literally had to make it, step-by-step process. This is the biggest thing I would do differently, is hire the property manager. And when you hire them, you need to interview them multiple times over. And texting is not an interview. Emailing is not an interview. Call them on the phone. If they don't have time to talk to you on the phone before they have your money, imagine how hard it's going to be to talk to them when they actually have your money. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience. They're like, oh, this guy again, I'm not going to talk to him. I already have his money. Don't worry about it. So if they're not good at communication beforehand, remember, the property manager is your number one person in your business. They're like your quarterback of your football team. They'll help you to score. They'll protect you. They'll control everything. So that's the thing that I always say. Once we find an area, then we get the property manager first, because remember, they're the experts. Then after that, we build the entire business, and incorporating things like DealMachine, realtors, wholesalers, all these other ways to get deals coming in. And then we filter that through the property manager. I don't say, let me put an offer. I first say, what does my property manager think? And so any student that comes to me, hey, Dustin, what do you think about this property? They send me the address and Excel sheet that, inside the course and coaching, I give them Excel sheet to run the numbers to do it right. And they send it to me. What do you even think about this property? I always reply back, what does your property manager say about the property? How much can it rent for? What's the vacancy factor? All the questions I've already went over. And if they haven't asked that, then they know, oh shoot, I should have done that first. But once they realize that, that's literally my first, my reply is always that. Then they lead now with those questions. Hey Dustin, what do you think about this property? It could rent for this much. My property manager said it's this much vacancy factor. So they've already known that I am after the expert talks to you about the property.
Love it. You said step one as well, finding an area. Do you have tips there on, being able to select that area?
Yes. So just like if you're going to start a convenience store, you're going to make sure that you have inventory and people to buy that inventory. You're not going to go in the Sahara Desert and put a convenience store, because there's no inventory is going to get you there, and nobody's going to be buying it. So what we do is we find anywhere all over the country. We look for good places that have good prices, which means lower prices but higher rents. And this is what I look for in my properties: 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. We don't want it too small. We don't want it too big. Hopefully a 2-car garage, maybe a 1-car garage. And I'm looking for properties that everybody either wants to rent or they want to buy. That's my goal. I want that, because in case I want to sell it, I want to have lots of buyers, but I'm always going to want to rent it. So I always want to have renters. So what I do is I look at this as, let's say, a city. Pick a state, drill into the city, and look at the city to see if the prices are a good price that I can afford. Let's say I personally like $150,000, between $50,000 to $150,000. That price range is what I like to stick to. And I know if people are lit on the coastlines, they're like, oh my goodness, there are houses for $50,000. I'm like, yes, there are some that are even $20,000. So you just need to be wise in how you do it. All through the Midwest, down in the Southeast, the Carolinas and Florida, lots of great properties. And remember, even though you're not going to live there, it doesn't matter. This is not a home you're going to live in. This is inventory. Other people will live there. So what we do, we make sure that it has the right types of properties that we want to buy, plenty of them, plenty of inventory that we can eventually buy, and that have the right price range that we can also rent it for more. With all that, then we drill down and say, this is a good area. Pause looking at properties from that point forward, start building the business, and then resume looking for properties.
Yeah. Do you have any lessons learned from doing that virtually for so long? Like from being able to, for newbies who are in one market and aren't going to see properties or aren't going to, they're doing it from afar.
I'll give you 2 lessons learned. Number 1, I don't fly anywhere anymore. I've only, out of the 30 plus properties that I've owned or that I do own, I've literally only seen one of them. So with that, one of them, and literally I don't even care to go to these cities. I don't want to. It's not necessary for me to do that. Mm-hmm. So that's a lesson learned. I never fly anywhere anymore. In fact, hundreds of my students, almost all of them, never fly to a new area, because I coach them in how to make sure we build the business first. We have the experts there on the ground. So that's the first one. Mm-hmm. The second one, here's a big tip. if you're going to be doing your own rehab, like if you're hiring contractors and your roofers, like if you're doing that yourself as opposed to having a manager, contractor, or something do the entire thing, here's a big tip that I'll give you. What I love to do is I love to have other people check on each other's work so I have as many eyeballs on a problem as possible. So, give you an example. Let's say you have a problem with the toilet and you're rehabbing, fix up the property. There's a problem with the toilet. You hire a plumber to go out there to fix the toilet, fix the leaks and all that sort of stuff. Well, that's great. He gets done and calls you and says, "Hey, here's a picture of it." You don't know if it leaks. You don't know if anything about it. You don't know if it even flushes. You just see a picture. So you say, "Great, thank you, plumber, thank you." Then whoever is the next person, literally in the house. If it's your property manager, great. I even had somebody that was doing the landscaping. I said, "Hey, could you go inside and obviously use the toilet if you want, but I want to make sure that you can actually flush a toilet, that there's no leaks, that it actually is installed properly. It'll take you 5 minutes, maybe at most 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Even use the restroom. Check it, and then let me know." They'll be glad to do that. I even had like a sliding glass door put in by a company, and I had my plumber like literally walking their house doing stuff, and I said, "Hey, can you just open the sliding glass door, make sure it looks fine?" I didn't want to give them any specific, like, make sure this, make sure that. I just said, "Tell me what your thoughts." They're going to easily say, "Hey, it's not put in right, it doesn't open." They're going to easily know that. So that's one thing that I love, to have as many eyeballs on the property as possible. I take all that information from all those many people. I read the Bible every day, and the Bible says wisdom comes from many counselors. So I want as many people giving me as much information as possible so I could, figure that out, disseminate that in my brain to figure out what's the next course of action. From there, I usually have a good picture on everything going on in my property because I do that with everything.
Love that. Yeah, and again, I have a ton of questions for you. I know we only have a few more minutes here today. Feel free to jump in the chat as well if you're watching this now. I want to make sure that everybody else has a chance to ask great questions as well too. So feel free to jump in there. And then obviously, I know Dustin, you've got you've got the course, you got the event, you've got a variety of different ways for people to connect with you directly too.
Oh, I also have a way so I want to give everybody, I just love sharing with this, sharing how to do this real estate. Like I'm just your next door neighbor or, a guy at your church that has figured this out. I just want to help you out. So I even I'll give you my real estate investing course literally for free. So if you text the word rental, RENTAL to 33777. Rental to 3377. I'll give you this course. It'll show you how to find an area of the country and invest, how to make sure you build the business first, how to buy the right properties, how to scale the business to where you can quit your job. I just love helping so many people out. And what's great is the more people I help, the better my life gets, because I'm like, man, when a student buys their first house, I'm like, it feels like I bought my first house. Or when they quit their job, I'm like, wow, I feel blessed to be a part of that whole entire process. So you can even go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course. I know you put it inside the chat there, but /free course, all one word. I try to give as many people as possible.
Yeah. Did you say, was it rental to 3377?
Rental to 33777.
3 sevens. Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. I'll tag that as well too. But I appreciate all the value you're giving people here. And I know you again, you have the podcast, you've got, your everything you're doing online. I mean, you put out a ton of awesome free content to be able to help guide people, inspire them, and give them a playbook to do this stuff. So yeah, very, very inspiring. I think one question I did have for a more advanced investor, I know you talked about building your team before you even start, but as you scale that portfolio, do you have any tips and lessons learned for the team and for how to hire to help support that scaling and continue to do that in a successful way?
Yeah, well, it's definitely the biggest thing revolves around your property manager. And then as you grow, your property manager will grow as well. Like I have one property manager that I think is managing 10 properties of mine, another property manager, I guess probably managing like 8 properties, but another one even more than that. So as you grow, they're going to grow in more properties. So here's a tip that I like to find a right property manager. I hire slow and I fire fast. So if a property manager isn't doing their job, if they're not evicting the people when they should, if they're letting them slide on the rent, whatever it might be, a big tip, because remember, this is a business. We want to make sure that we also give them business processes. So because it's a business, we hire slow when we fire fast. If somebody's not doing the job right, we get them out. Now, the big tip that I'm going to give everybody on top of hire slow and fire fast is build business processes and systems into your business so you don't have to do it. I'll give you a quick example of what that could look like. So all my property managers, I give them my rules for investing, not investing, sorry, that's the wrong way to say it, for running my properties. So they might run other landlords' properties differently. I don't care how they take care of other properties. This is how you run my properties. The rent is due on the 1st. It's late after the 3rd. On the 4th, you give them a 3-day notice and you tack on the late fee. As soon as that 3-day notice is up, that's when you start the eviction process. We don't take any sob stories. We don't take anything. We treat everybody the same. This is like literally the exact opposite of discrimination. Everybody is 100% the same. You don't pay your rent, you're going to get evicted. Just like if you have a house that you live in, you have a mortgage, you don't pay your mortgage, your bank is not going to say, after you call them up, hey, bank, my son was arrested. I had to use our mortgage to pay to get him out. You know, what the bank will probably say, oh, yeah, that's okay. You don't have to pay your mortgage this month. No, they're not going to say that. They're going to say, that's too bad. The mortgage is still due. If you don't pay, we're going to start the eviction or the foreclosure process. Same thing. We want to put these systems in place so our property managers run the business the way we want them to run it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think your key there is saying like, hey, build processes that take you out of the business, so that way you're not, it's not owning you, you're owning the business there.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah. Again, feel free to jump in the chat. I know we only have a few more minutes here, Dustin. I know one thing I do love within the course that we talked about, and I would love for you to kind of explain this is a great way to leave us here too. Is you said your goal is to kind of jump into that BI side of the quadrant as soon as possible. So can you maybe explain the quadrant like that, how to
Absolutely.
align yourself the right way, how to earn the right income? That would be, great way to think about it.
Yeah. So Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book called Cash Flow Quadrant. Definitely opened my mind to lots of great stuff, as well as the Rich Dad Poor Dad. Actually, that was Rich Dad.
Yeah, I think like half our audience has either read Rich Dad or that was one of the reasons they're interested in real estate. I know for me personally it was. So
that's literally the catalyst to get me into investing and passive income, was really literally reading that book. That's what got me into it. So the Cash Flow Quadrant's a fantastic book. You go from being an employee and a sole proprietor. Those aren't bad. In fact, let's say 75% of the population it's good for them to be employees. In fact, I love hiring employees that are basically in the E quadrant. There's also sole proprietor, which, like I said, I have my skateboard manufacturing business. If I didn't get that next customer, I wasn't making money. That was a headache. Now, where I really love what Robert talks about, the not E, the B and the I, the business and the investor quadrant. Now, what I also do, I don't have the investor quadrant being completely separate on my rental properties. Now, if I just jumped into a syndication on a hotel, like 2 hotels, syndication, thousands of dollars you just pay and you get to be a passive investor. That's where I'm passive investing. I literally gave it to somebody else and said, and in fact, she's Annie Dickerson from Good Egg. She's a syndicator. She's actually going to be at the conference. And so a good friend of mine. So I'm like, let me invest with you. She's a great investor as well. So that's passive. That's literally the I quadrant. For what I just tell you all about how to do it right, it's not that I'm an I there. I'm a B there that owns inventory, and that I would be inventory or investing. I'm investing my money, but my business owns that inventory. So I combine them both. So all that to say, when you move over from being an employee or a sole proprietor over to the business owner or the investor, that's when you are compounding your time, your money, and other people's time and other people's money. Like all the employees that I hire, I literally have, I want to say 4 or 5 businesses now that make money. And I have employees, I have investments, I have all this other stuff that doesn't take my work to do it. So when you can go into a business quadrant where you have a business, let's say producing something, but you hire people and the business pays for those people, then you're a business owner. You're compounding your worth in using other people's time and effort and expertise. Same thing with investing. We compound our money, put it into something that's going to make us a better return. So in doing that now, all of my time, literally other than, hanging with the family, going to the gym, all that sort of stuff, but business-wise or making money-wise, it's literally for passive income and creating businesses that own inventory. So being an investor, being in the B, I don't waste my time with anything else outside of that. Being an employee or sole proprietor, I don't need to do that anymore. And here's a great thing. Because I quit my job when I was 37 years old, I literally have 40 plus hours of my life to devote to creating these businesses. Now, a lot of people talk about It's called streams of income. We want multiple streams of income, which this is really, really good. Like, from this one, like one property, one business, one book that you might sell, something like just a bunch of streams of income. That's really, really good. But I love having a river of income. That river of income comes from my rental properties. Like it's literally flowing. It's just gushing. I can't stop it, which I would never would, but it's gushing. And then now, because I have that river, I now have streams of income funneling into this bigger river to make it even bigger. So every bit of money I make outside of real estate, it goes back into real estate because that makes my river bigger and bigger and bigger, and I just keep making more money.
Yeah, that's a fantastic filter to think about your decision making and how to, where to put your money. So, yeah, Dustin, really, really appreciate the time today, man. This has been phenomenal. So, can you tell people again, just to remind them where's the best way to connect with you? And I know throughout we've linked to a couple different free resources, and hope to see people at REWBCON as well. But can you kind of share how people can connect with you directly too?
Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely my podcast, Master Passive Income Podcast, it's literally just me teaching how to do this stuff. And I don't really interview other like quote unquote experts. It's literally just me teaching, but I'll bring on great people like Matt, to, talk about DealMachine. So all the people that are listening, all the audience can see, hey, Dustin's using these software services that help his business. Maybe I can use it. So Master Passive Income Podcast YouTube channel is growing. I just keep putting out more and more videos because I just realized the more people that I help, same thing with REWBCON, my Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, the more people that I serve, the more people that I help, the better their lives get, as well as the better my life gets. And everybody around us just keeps getting better and better. So definitely check out the podcast, my YouTube channel, Master Passive Income, get the free course and all that sort of stuff. I just want to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, I really how mission driven you are, and you've always given back so much to us and our community. So again, appreciate your time, Dustin, and thanks again for coming on today.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
Great. Well, everybody, this is Matt Camp with DealMachine, and everybody watching, happy deal finding.